Hi everyone, this is Selvi. Today's topic is, do we need to re-estimate a story before planning it for a sprint when it gets spilled over? Let's consider a scenario. We have a user story which is estimated as 8 story points, and we plan that as part of the sprint 1. And during sprint and execution, that story was also under development, but at the end of the sprint we were unable to complete that as a team. It got spilled over. Now whenever an user story or any work item gets spilled over from a sprint, it will not directly move into the next sprint. First thing, we need to think what is the priority of that work item. This call should be taken by the product owner. So for example, this work item, product owner is feeling that it is not of priority anymore because we have much more priority items. This can still stay on the product backlog. Now this will go back to the product backlog. This is one situation. Second situation is, still the priority holds good and product owner feels that this should be taken up immediately in the upcoming sprint so that we don't have any kind of challenges in future. So now this will be moved to the future sprint, which means sprint 2 in our case. So this is what will happen when a particular work item gets spilled over from the sprint. Either it will go to the product backlog or it will go to the immediate sprint that we are starting. Now let's come to the question of whether we need re-estimation or not. Definitely we should not re-estimate. Why we should not re-estimate? In sprint 1, we have spent some time, right? We devoted some effort for that particular work item, but unfortunately we were unable to complete, but we spent some effort. Okay, but how are we going to measure that effort? Can we say out of 8 story points, 3 story points I have completed or 4 story points I have completed? We cannot say that. So if a work item gets spilled over, automatically the associated story points also will stay with that work item. It will not be taken as partially for the completed sprint as part of achievement. Whatever achieved story points in that sprint, we will not consider anything from the spilled over work item. That is very much clear now. So for any work item that is getting spilled over, whatever the associated story points that is in that particular work item, it will not be considered partially also in the achieved story points. If 8 story points means, yeah, we would have completed almost everything. We generally say that we have completed most of the things, but few things testing is pending. But still at the end of the day, definition of done is not met, which means the story is not in a state of closure, or product owner is not accepting that because it is not even meeting the definition of done. Now in that case, we cannot claim that it is actually taken care. So now the question is, how are we going to ensure that whatever we have spent, how are we going to use it? No, we cannot use it because in sprint 1, we are not allowed to claim that it is done because it is actually not done. So we cannot claim that. Now let's consider product owner is saying that the priority of this work item holds good. Let's pick it up in sprint 2. So during sprint 2 also, it will come with same story point 8. There will not be any reduction. I'll tell you why now. Now in sprint 2, maybe first few days only we have completed. Now we will take the entire credit of achieving 8 story points in this sprint. Otherwise, what will happen if we are keep on re-estimating? Let's consider I am keep on re-estimating. First time, I have already explained, we cannot take partially the story points in achieved category, because we cannot really segregate what is achieved, how many story points are achieved. There is no mechanism to calculate that. So in sprint 1, we cannot add anything in the achieved story points. Now, before picking the story to sprint 2, we are re-estimating. Let's consider that as a scenario. So team is saying, no, now from 8, it got reduced to 3. Now we will take the story with 3 story points. Now let's consider in sprint 2 also, unfortunately, we got into blocker. We were unable to complete the story. Next sprint it is going, sprint 3. Now team is re-estimating again and saying this becomes 1 story point. But actually, what is the story point of the story? It was 8. Where all the 7 story points had gone? No idea, because we were keep on re-estimating. Now, at the end, how are we going to give the justification for velocity? What is velocity? Velocity is achieved story points. Average velocity is achieved story points for a particular number of sprints. For last 3 sprints, what is the achieved story points divided by the number of stories? Sorry, the number of sprints. For 3 sprints means it is divided by 3. For 5 sprints means it's divided by 5. Now if we are start doing this as a practice, the story points that are getting achieved is going to reduce. Now velocity will reduce. It is not about only velocity reduction. It is at the end, we are diluting the whole estimate that was given during the refinement. There was no scope reduction in the story. The story is traveling with the same set of scope what was defined and what was decided during the backlog refinement. Then how can we re-estimate that? Because yes, sprint 1 I devoted some effort, sprint 2 I devoted some effort, but I failed to complete. I was unable to complete. I here is a team. As a team, we were unable to complete. We were unable to meet the definition of done. Now we reached sprint 3. If we are keep on re-estimating, it looks like the scope of the story has reduced, or the story has not holding the same set of things what we were expecting during the backlog refinement. That is what the meaning it will project. But there was no scope change. The story is traveling with the same set of acceptance criteria. But just because it was keep on traveling with n number of sprints, we cannot re-estimate it. This is the disadvantage. If we re-estimate, it will entirely dilute the whole purpose of estimation that was decided during the backlog refinement meeting. Then when we can use re-estimation? We will understand that also. Re-estimation can be done on work items when there is a scope change. Let's consider in this same situation, sprint 1 we failed to complete. Before taking it to sprint 2, product owner is saying, hey, I am reducing the scope of the story, acceptance criteria, few things I am removing. Now it is valid. Now it is actually need to undergo re-estimation because there is a scope change. If there is no scope change and what was expected, if it is holding the same, we should not re-estimate at any time. Only the question will come like, why in sprint 1, as it was not completed, there was no achievement related to that story point. In sprint 2, we are going to take the entire credit. So at the end, average velocity will be balanced. If you are keep on reducing, the whole average velocity will also reduce. I'm not talking about one stories. If similar 2-3 stories, if we are start doing this, then at the end, the whole average velocity is going to reduce. So again, I'm trying to explain in a nutshell. Whenever a work item gets spilled over, either it will go to the product backlog, because if there is a change in the priority, which means basically the priority got reduced, then product owner will push that work item to the product backlog. If the work item is holding the same priority, then it will be immediately picked up in the upcoming sprint. Now about re-estimation. We should not re-estimate a particular work item when it is getting spilled over. The reason is, if we are keep on re-estimating the particular work item, it looks like the scope of the work item is getting reduced, because of which we are re-estimating. But the situation is entirely different. The scope have not changed, only the spillover happened, because of which we were re-estimating, which is wrong. If you are keep on doing that, at the end, the whole decision that we have made during the backlog refinement, considering what was the expectation, that would have completely get diluted, because 8 story points may get reduced to 5 or 3, but where the trust story points had gone, we have re-estimated. That's where it had gone. So that is not the right solution. So we should take the story points as it is till the story or the work item is getting accepted by the product owner, and whichever the sprint it is getting accepted by the product owner and it is meeting definition of done, that particular sprint we should claim the entire credit of the story points that it has achieved. We cannot anytime segregate the story points like, okay, partially let me claim in sprint 1, remaining we will claim it in sprint 2. That concept is not here. If there is a spillover, then that entire story points will stay in the same story or the work item, and it will move to the next sprint. There will not be any single story point which will be either reduced or taken as an achievement in the sprint. We should not do that. When we can re-estimate? We can re-estimate only when there is a scope change happening. It was initially planned as a scope during the backlog refinement, and as a team we have estimated, but now product owner is coming up with a scope reduction or maybe scope increase also. In that case, we should go for re-estimation. So in simple terms, re-estimation is only applicable when there is a scope change, either it is increase or decrease of the scope. Re-estimation is not applicable in cases where work items are getting spilled over. I think I have explained the details about the re-estimation concept in this episode. Hope this would have helped many of you in understanding the concept. Thanks everyone for listening. Happy learning and stay tuned.